Hey everyone, Andy Rafael from eTechnics.com, and you may remember that we did a video the other day on the TRX40 Aorus Master from Aorus Gigabyte, whatever they're calling themselves these days. Well, what if you want to take it one step further and go, I don't know, maybe a little bit extreme? Get it? Extreme? Let's do this. If you like our video content on YouTube, then you're going to love what we put up on TikTok. That's right, we're hip, we're cool, or at least we think we are, but we do chuck a lot of behind the scenes videos on there, so it's definitely worth checking out. You can find us on TikTok at eTechnics or click the link in the description below. So as I mentioned, the other day we did release a video on the TRX40 Aorus Master, but if you want, I don't know, a few more features and maybe even a little bit more performance, that's when you have to go to extreme levels. And duly named, we have the TRX40 Aorus Extreme. Now, before I actually talk about the board, I want to talk about sort of the packaging and, well, one of the key accessories that you get with it. So starting with the packaging, I mean, basically it's what we expect from an extreme motherboard. This is the TRX40 Aorus Extreme, but if we have a look at some of the other extreme boards that have come out, very, very similar packaging, basically all black, with the Z390 Aorus Waterforce as well as the X570 Aorus Extreme. Don't know why it sounded like I said X570, X570. But moving back to the TRX40, basically there's not really too much to shout home about on the front of the box. It gives us kind of the key bits of information such as quad channel DDR4, the fact that it is PCI Express 4.0 ready, which will lead me on to one of these accessories that comes with it, which also leads on to the PCIe 4.0 NVMe SSD ready. So turning the box around, this is kind of where we get, I guess, the first look of the motherboard. It does have a direct 16 plus 3-phase Infineon digital VRM solution with 70 amp power stage. So this is the phases that are actually situated around the CPU socket. Talking about the CPU socket, we will kind of go into this on the motherboard, but it does utilize the same socket design as the original kind of second gen Threadripper, so you will be able to use the coolers from there. It does have your thermal reactive armor, does have Wi-Fi 6, does come with this PCI Express Gen 4 AIC adapter, which I will talk through in a moment. Does also have dual 10 GBE LAN, so basically this board, as the name suggests, is for those who need to go just that little bit more extreme. So before I jump into the board, this is one of the accessories that comes with it. This is the Aorus Gen 4 AIC adapter. You may remember that we actually did some coverage on this when we was talking about NVMe drives at the Aorus Suite at Computex 2019. Now I wanted to do this on camera because I know that everyone kind of, gets excited by it, so let's do this. So there you go. So basically what this is a 4x PCI Express 4.0 or 3.0 M.2 add-in card, basically. So once you open this up, which is opened up, there's some more on the other side. We're going to have to do it as well, aren't we? We're going to have to do the other side. So now that we've done that side, there are sort of 6 screws on here. Once you've actually dismantled this, taken the plate off, it will reveal what's underneath, which is a copper thermal design. It does have double-sided M.2 heat sinks on there, and it allows you to put 4 M.2 NVMe drives into here. Obviously, it doesn't have to be NVMe, but using just kind of SATA drives, you're not really going to gain the full advantage of this. It does allow you to kind of put the cards in there and have blistering fast speeds, which is going to be perfect for anyone who's using this board for rendering and workstation related tasks. Now moving on to the board, the first thing that you're actually going to notice with the board is the fact that it is absolutely huge. In typical kind of, I guess, extreme or Aorus Extreme fashion or nature, it has an XL80X form factor, which means it's just that little bit longer, which is great for, I guess, if you need extra expansion slots or you have slightly thicker expansion cards. The CPU socket, as I did mention, is kind of existing when you compare it against second generation Threadripper and the CPU coolers that you can use. The pinout, sadly, is a little bit different, which means that you aren't going to be able to use second generation Threadripper processors with this exact board. In terms of memory support, we do have 8 DIMM slots for either side, and I've got to admit it is a little bit tight around the sort of area of the CPU socket, but you shouldn't have any problem even with kind of higher profile memory memory. Now, in terms of the power delivery to the CPU socket, as I mentioned earlier, it does have a 16+3 phase design, which you can see all of our kind of MOSFETs and chokes and everything all situated along the top and also down the side. Now, in terms of keeping all of that cool, we do have a very large kind of long heatsink along the top as well as down the side, and these are connected via an 8mm, what they call a mega heat pipe. I mean, to me, it just looks like a heat pipe. I'm not quite sure what's so mega about it. 8mm is not exactly thick, is it? And that's thick with 2 C's. Or is it 3? The heatsink itself does incorporate Gigabyte's or Aorus's kind of patented fins array design, which does mean that you're going to get a lot more surface area, and that's why the heatsink itself isn't actually a lot thicker. It's actually quite slim really, but very long. In terms of getting the power delivery to the CPU, we do have 2 EPS 8-pin power connectors, which I really like being situated in this corner as opposed to over here. The other power connector on the board that obviously we expect is going to be the 24-pin, which is here, and I do like the fact that it is kind of parallel to the board, and you can see a very long RGB strip down here. So if you do want to kind of go with the whole unicorns and rainbows, you have got the facility to do that with sort of light reflecting off the side of your chassis. But in terms of the other power connectors, instead of just the 24-pin, we also have a 6-pin, which is situated down here. Before I talk about the expansion slots, I want to talk about some of the other stuff that's down the side. As we can see, and this is something that we actually saw on the X570 version of this board, is basically all of the slots and connectors are actually parallel with the board, which does make so much sense, and I wish kind of more motherboard manufacturers actually did this. So to start with, we have got some USB 3.2 connectors down here. We have a whopping 10 SATA 3 ports. There are some other connectors here as well for your USB Type-C, and then we've got a whole abundance of kind of fan connectors, so plenty to kind of get you going and get you started, but there is still a lot more connectors down the bottom of the board. But talking about fan connectors, there are actually a few more just over here, and probably the coolest, chunkiest power and reset buttons I've ever seen. Now, with them large power and reset buttons, which I've got to admit, this did look metal, but I think it's more of kind of an ABS plastic injection molded kind of material, but there is a really cool looking debug LED. It's kind of situated within it, and I guess at first glance you might even miss it, but I don't know, it just seems like it's in the right place where you'd expect it to be. Now, as we move further down the board, you will see that we do have this large kind of heatsink area around the PCI Express slots. Now, it does stem into the M.2 shields in here, but there is, and if I can get a little bit closer and maybe hit it at the right angle, there is a fan under here, and it does actually look a little bit larger than I guess some of the ones that we saw on X570 boards. Obviously with the X570 Extreme from Aorus, it didn't actually have a fan, it was completely passive, but on TRX40 it does need to have a fan in here, but I'm guessing it's going to be as quiet, if not a little bit quieter, than the X570 variants from the other kind of rest of the range from Aorus. Now, in terms of other connectors, we do have some VMod volt points, we do have some BIOS switches, we have a TPM connector, we do have some RGB connectors, so we do have an addressable one and a conventional one, as well as another addressable and another conventional header. We do have ports for Thunderbolt as well, and of course HD audio, which I've got to admit is in the worst location ever. Why can't motherboard manufacturers change this? Now, the reason I actually say this is in the worst location ever is generally your power supply will actually sit underneath the motherboard, and you kind of normally have to have a cable kind of trailing all the way along just to plug in your front panel audio connectors. Now, the only other heatsink on the board is over the audio, which does feature the ESS Sabre Hi-Fi. Now, it also does kind of stem into the rear I/O, which by the looks of it does have an Aorus logo, which is going to light up using RGB, and that can all be controlled using the RGB Fusion 2.0 software. Now, if you don't want to go with these SATA connectors, obviously we do have room for M.2, and it does look like we have 1, 2, 3, and potentially 4. I'm guessing there's actually one situated under here. So basically you have the ability to put 4 in, but of course with that accessory that I talked about earlier, the AIC card, you have room for another 4 M.2s. So in theory, because of the kind of sheer volume of expansion lanes that are going to be available with the new 3rd generation Threadripper processors, you're going to have the ability to actually install up to 8 M.2 drives into this board in conjunction with that AIC card. I don't know about you, but to me, that is absolutely astronomical. I guess for the most part, having that amount of M.2s is going to be perfect for anyone who's using this for kind of workstation related tasks or rendering and things like that, where generally storage is your bottleneck. Now, for those who are going to be using this for rendering or even gaming, obviously PCI Express expansion slots are going to be the important thing. Now, the weird thing is, and I don't know if anyone noticed this kind of straight off the bat, but these M.2 shields take up, I guess, something that generally would be quite vital, which is going to be either X1 or X4 slots, but on this board, well, there are none. Instead, we have 4 physical X16 slots, of which the top one operates at X16 speeds, second one at X8, third one at X16, and the fourth one at X8. That means obviously you could put these into SLI or Crossfire if you really wanted to, but in my honest opinion, I do think multi-GPU technologies, at least for gaming, is pretty much a dying breed. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is obviously the rear I/O. Now, something that I love on the Extreme board, and I do think that kind of every motherboard manufacturer should have this on their whole range, low end to high end, is the built-in I/O shield plate. Now, what you will find on here for people who are kind of troubleshooting, we do have a clear CMOS button and also a Q-Flash Plus button as well. There is plenty of USB 3.2 ports here, as well as some more here, and another one here, as well as a Type-C port. Now, this one is actually specific. If you did want to flash your BIOS, you can plug a USB flash drive into here, press the Q-Flash Plus button, and it will work from this USB port. Now, we do have dual Ethernet as well, which it's quite weird in the fact that kind of one's orientated this way and one's orientated that way. We generally expect to have them side by side, but these both are dual Intel 10 GBE. So if you have got kind of the appropriate equipment with like a 10 GBE switch, you're really going to harness kind of the full potential of network performance on this board. If you aren't using Ethernet, obviously we do have Wi-Fi as well, so you could connect up into the Intel Wi-Fi 6, which is 2x2 802.11 AX, as well as Bluetooth 5. And then lastly, talking about the audio, we do have our gold-plated audio connectors and our optical SP diff, which uses the ESS Sabre Hi-Fi audio, which, as we know on Aorus, is actually pretty decent. And I think audio over the years has come a long way from where it used to be in terms of onboard audio, well, pretty much sucking pretty hard. So there you have it. The thing that I love about the Aorus Extreme range is no matter what platform you're on, there's always something that makes it a little bit different, stand out from the crowd. So with Z390, it was all to do with water force. With X570, it was the only X570 board that didn't have an active fan solution. So what about a TRX40? What makes this kind of, stand out from the crowd? Well, for me personally, it's the fact that you can have 4 M.2 NVMe drives on the board kind of as a standalone, and then with the included AIC card just kind of giving you extra value for money, you could fit another 4. So in total, you could have up to 8 M.2 drives. It's just absolutely astronomical. That's the only real word that I've kind of got for it. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It gave you a little bit more of an insight into TRX40 and the Aorus Extreme motherboard. Remember, we have got a video on the TRX40 Aorus Master as well, so definitely go and check that one out, and I will see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.